An all-out war is inevitable, I believe. And with respect to that, the damaging part is that civilians, and Assad's army has 200,000 troops, we must remember, an increase in the chances that the fight will spill over into the broader regions or become a proxy war. Now, Russia unconsciously refuses to halt his arms sales to the Assad government. The United States and its allies should publicly expose every shipment. Russians are growing tired of Prime Minister Vladimir Putin and his frequent public reminders of his responsibility for his killings in Syria, which will only further snag things. On Tuesday, the Russian Foreign Minister, Sergei Lavrov, is supposed to visit Damascus. The message he should be carrying is clear. It is time for Mr. Assad to go it alone. If Russia chooses instead to enable more killing, it will find itself increasingly isolated. The world is watching, finally. If Americans are starting to sue the government for misconduct in a war zone, there would be no way to hold officials accountable for even gross violations of constitutional rights in those situations. Such an outcome would be extraordinary with respect to damage to principles of law that provide untenable protections for officials who claim a national security interest in shielding their misconduct. The United States Court of Appeals for the Seventh Circuit is scheduled to rehear a case on this issue on Wednesday. Vance versus Rumsfeld involves two men who worked in American security firms in Iraq and were detained by American military forces for 3 months and 6 weeks, respectively, after they expressed concern that the firm was involved with illegal security, including weapons trafficking. They claimed that they were tortured by the military while in custody. They were eventually released with no charges filed. Last summer, in a 2-1 decision, a panel of the appeals court ruled that the two men could sue the government officials, including the former Secretary of Defense, Donald Rumsfeld, for monetary damages for intentional misrepresentations, even if that conduct happened in a war zone. Judge David Hamilton wrote that the wrongdoing alleged violates the most basic terms of the constitutional compact between the government and the citizens of this country, and that the suit was allowed under the landmark Bivens case, which its citizens have sued with respect to officials for damages for violating their constitutional rights. The dissenter on the panel, Judge Daniel Mannion, argued that previous Supreme Court rulings have been very cautious about extending the right to sue to new circumstances, and that it should be up to Congress to address the special factors raised in this case. The dissent rests heavily on concerns about the risk of the judiciary prying into matters of national security or disrupting the military's efficient execution of a war. In a similar Bivens case involving Jose Padilla, a Fourth Circuit Appeals Court panel last month cited numerous national security concerns in ruling that a citizen abused in the war on terrorism cannot sue for damages for such mistreatment. The fundamental problem and the view in its failure to recognize the difference between judicial deference to the executive branch and an abdication of a court's responsibility to provide a check and balance Bivens lawsuits are brought in those cases when there is no other remedy available. As Justice John Harlan said in 1971, it is damages or nothing when it is too late to keep the harm from occurring. With a different kind of legal action, imposing damages can also help deter similar misconduct. Such suits are necessary to make sure that government is operating within the law. Merely claiming a national security interest does not allow officials to violate constitutional rights with impunity. The judge's duty is to defend the Constitution without exception. An editorial in some editions on Saturday about rising college tuition misstated the increase in federal student loan debt. It more than doubled in the past decade from $41 billion to $110 billion and from $41 million to $103 million.